afternoon and welcome to The Rundown. I am your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, September 7th, Labor Day. Federal judge blocks the Trump administration move to cut the census count. Critics say that the White House is out to undercount certain populations. The coronavirus rises in 22 states. And Trump threatens to yank funding from schools that teach the 1619 Project. The president has launched yet another attack against education intended to address racism in America. Unions threaten work stoppage amidst calls for racial justice. And Trump orders federal agencies to stop funding anti-racism trainings, calling them un-American. And 19 families purchased 96 acres of land to create a safe haven for Black people. Let's get to the news. The federal judge in California has temporarily blocked the Trump administration's efforts to cut the 2020 census, which critics say is undercounting communities of color. The U.S. District Judge in the Northern District of California issued an order in response to a challenge by the Coalition of Civil Rights, local government, and Native American groups, which filed an emergency request as part of a federal lawsuit. The order is expected to remain in effect until the court's hearing on September 17th, when the coalition will argue for census counting to continue through the end of October, as the Census Bureau initially planned, NPR reported on Saturday. Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to The Rundown. I am Captivating Christian, and this is a part of the segment in which I just give my personal commentary on the stories of this afternoon. But before we get started with that, for any new subscribers and visitors to the channel, I would like to say welcome and hope you enjoy. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and hit that red button so you never miss another update or anything that we have here going on Cap Hill. And to my state reps, which are you all in the chat, welcome, and let's get started and have some fun. All right, so this first story comes from who else but our famous and lovable President Donald J. Trump. So, of course, I know I told you some time ago that the Trump administration has been trying to cut the census short from its national regular scheduled time when the census does come out every 10 years. In order to count everybody in the United States, they have up until October. That's when, normally after people don't mail it in or don't do it online, they have people going door to door to continue the fill out census portion. The Trump administration has been trying to cut that short, reason being, of course, the census allows for funding to go into communities as well as representation, meaning your lawmakers, your state legislators, your local legislators, gendermandering, all that stuff that comes from the census as well. So if you cut people out of the census, you then increase somebody else's representation and funding. So they are undercutting, ding, 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 communities of color to try and cut the census short. So that's what's going on here. Luckily, a federal judge in California has put a freeze on it, which gives them valuable time to continue with the census to count. Mind you, this court date is in September, I want to say 20 something. I said it in a thing, but please forgive me because this is time from when I did that, but it's in September. But it does give them time to continue the count, and hopefully by the time they go through the court process, the court will say, no, let them continue the census. It's always been continued that way. Let the census continue. Let's hope and pray that this happens. At least we know that there is some form of justice in this dictatorship that we are somewhat in. Coronavirus cases are rising in 22 of the 50 U.S. states, according to analysts. Labor Day holiday weekend traditionally filled with family gatherings and parties to mark the end of the summer. About 3 weeks ago, cases were increasing in only 3 states: Hawaii, Illinois, and South Dakota, according to analysts comparing cases of the past 2 weeks prior to August 8th through August 22nd. With the past 2 weeks, most of the 22 states where cases are now rising in the least populated parts of the Midwest and South. Cases are also rising rapidly in Iowa as well as North Dakota. And cases are decreasing with new infections in the most populous states like California, Florida, as well as Texas. Okay, so here we are in Labor Day. This particular article talks about the coronavirus rise in 22 states. Now, the 22 states, they didn't mention all of them, but most of the states, as you kind of gathered from the article, they are Midwest and Southern states. And a lot of the Midwest states, it's just a big city thing. This stuff doesn't happen in our neck of the woods. Not mentioning that a lot of people from the Midwest vacation in some of the larger cities. Not only that, they have children or grandchildren or whomever. They attend schools in a lot of these larger cities. So therefore, of course, eventually, it wouldn't take rocket science just to figure out that if it's happening in the cities, eventually it would get to the Midwest, to a lot of the other southern states that they felt that they were immune from it. So here we are, we're here at this impasse where the southern states and Midwest states are catching an uptick of the coronavirus, while the larger states, the more populous states like the Californias, the Texas, and the Floridas seem to have a decline in new infections, but not a decline in infection rate or deaths, but just new infections, which I guess is a good thing in a sense, but they're still not out of the woods yet. So with that, yes, we have a new rise of numbers, and with the holiday upon us now, with people doing, either beaching, family gatherings or something like that, people get tired of being in the house or secluded, so, they want to go out and have fun, but just, again, you still have to make sure that you are using precaution and taking the measures that you need to, because like Dr. Fauci has stated, trying to get a cap on it before winter hits, because when winter gets here, that then increases infection rate because of the flu and other things you're battling. So it is important that you kind of get a grip on it now, because if winter hits and there's no control of it, it will spiral out of control. President Donald Trump has launched yet another assault against education intended to address racism in America. On Sunday morning, Trump tweeted that the Department of Education was investigating whether California public schools had implemented the New York Times 1619 Project into their curriculum. The Pulitzer Prize-winning aims to reframe American history around the year slaves landed on its shores, and by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the national narrative. The Department of Education is looking at this, he said. If so, they will not be funded, Trump wrote, sharing a tweet on September 1st from an unverified account stating that California schools were using this curriculum. It follows a White House memo released on Friday and obtained by the Washington Post that ordered federal agencies to discontinue racial sensitivity training. The Trump administration claims that training sessions were divisive, anti-American propaganda, and that training that mentioned white privilege or suggest that racism is a part of the nation's foundation undercuts the government's core values. All agencies were directed to cancel any training related to white privilege or critical race theory, a school of thought which views race as a social construct that is used by white people to perpetuate institutional racism of people of color. It's unclear how much of this training was conducted at federal agencies. The memo was issued days as the guest on Fox News, Tucker Carlson, tonight bashed the critical race theory. Okay, let me just say a few things about this particular article right here. One, how can someone who's not that educated or well-versed in history know what systematic racism even is to say that it doesn't exist, which it does? And two, it is funny to me how he constantly uses funding or defunding something in order for somebody to cower to his will. That's interesting to me. Well, anyway, the particular story, if you came in late, it's about the 1619 Project. The 1619 Project is a Pulitzer Prize winning length of criteria that basically rewrites American history, and from its whitewashing of like the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons and all of the other statues that adorn our state capital, Washington D.C., our nation's capital, Washington D.C. All of that, it kind of wipes that all away, and it really tells the truth of American history starting from 1619 when the first ship of slaves came to these shores. And it doesn't sugarcoat it, it doesn't dance it around. It talks about the slavery, it talks about the contributions of African Americans in this moment, in moments of Jim Crow, in moments of the civil rights movement, all that stuff. And it doesn't gloss over it like, oh yeah, there was slavery, and then there was Harriet Tubman, and she took the slaves on the Underground Railroad, and all is well, hold hands, kumbaya. No, it talks about the hard truths of what had happened, the destruction and murders and killings and thuggish riots of white people, of the KKK, of Black Wall Street, of Rosewood, all those things. He doesn't want it taught in schools. He got a word, I think it was Tucker Carlson, or someone, of course, in Fox News that he listens to all the time, that was talking about it happening in a California school. However, of course, as always, it was not confirmed or corroborated by anyone that the California schools are taking this into curriculum. But however, he said if they do, he will defund them. So the Department of Education is looking into it. And it would be funny how the Department of Education is looking into something that is educational, which Donald Trump feels that it is anti-American. So you mean to tell me telling the truth about African Americans' position in this country and the treatment in which they have forgone for many years is un-American, but it's American to parade the falsehoods of white Americans and their contributions that they stole from African Americans, that they free labored Africans, killed, raped, murdered, so on and so forth for many a year. That's okay. That's American. I'm confused. So that America is white. It's basically what you're saying. But he's not racist. Or bigoted. Right. I'll wait. Hey, this is Captivating Christian here to remind you to tune in to Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Politics and Wellness every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. You never know what you might get. Unions representing millions across several working class sectors are threatening to authorize work stoppages in support of the Black Lives Matter movement amidst calls for concrete measures that address racial injustice. In a statement first shared with the Associated Press, the labor leaders who represent teachers, auto workers, truck drivers, and clerical staff, among others, have signed a willing September 4th to escalate protest tactics to force local and federal lawmakers to take action on policing reform and systematic racism. They say the walkouts, if they were to move forward with them, would last for as long as they needed to. The status quo of police killing black people, of armed white nationalists killing demonstrators, of millions sick and increasingly desperate, is clearly unjust and cannot continue. In this statement, they also said that it was signed by several branches of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the Service Employees International Union, and affiliates of the National Education Association. All right, so here we are with this particular story, and it is about time that the unions have now stepped up and said, hey, if you don't start taking Black Lives Matter, the movement, and all that is going on, this social unrest, the police brutality, all that, if you don't start taking it seriously, what we will do, we will take our power as a union in our own hands and walk out. So that means, even though everything is kind of limited as far as things that are happening right now, there are still people working. And they're saying, hey, if y'all don't start taking this seriously, we will then stop working. And once they stop working, that really puts a halt on a lot of things. So, it's like, pay attention, which I think is a great thing. I think, as a people coming together, you can only make but so much. You can only move but so much. But when everyone comes together under one cause, you can really move mountains. And that's just a sign of what this is. It's not about, again, I don't know how many times people have to explain this over and over. It's not about only Black Lives Matter. It's about these things that are happening to Black lives. And for that, it needs attention. That's it. That is it. That is all. And it's so sad that you have people who don't even want that, who will infiltrate it and cause violence just so it can be disrupted. However, I'm glad that it's moving forward. I'm glad that people see the true intent of it as the actual situations that they condemn continue to happen in broad daylight, live on camera, in your face, So I'm glad that it's still moving forward and that the unions have decided to come together and take action to have a walkout if need be, and for however long it needs to be until these issues are fully and completely addressed. Not just temporarily put a band-aid on it, but actually addressed and fundamental changes are made. In another tagged admission that he believes that America equates to whiteness, President Donald Trump has ordered the cease and desist of any government funding for anti-racism federal training programs because they are anti-American propaganda. The edict was delivered by the director of the White House's Office of Management and Budget in a chilling and telling memo on Friday, in which he expressed Trump's outrage that sessions about critical race theory and white privilege were taking place in federal agencies. Describing attempts to change this unjust state of affairs as divisive, Trump has ordered all federal agencies in the executive branch to take immediate measures ensuring their white employees do not have to consider the idea that they have privilege in America. And now here's President Cheeto again talking about the same thing which I mentioned earlier about education, defunding education for teaching this 1619 project, which is basically eradicating white history and actually putting the proper people in history that contributed to the history of the United States, which is only fair. But of course, when you've been raised that George Washington and the Thomas Jeffersons and the Benjamin Franklins and all these other white folks did everything, and you come from a nation of great white people that made this great nation, and you forget about the Indians and the Africans that was already here when the first person came here and claimed that they discovered it. How do you discover something that was already here with people living here? I don't know, but you stole it. But you won't admit that. You'll act like you came here on a mission to save souls. When you left your own country for religious persecution, but yet you come here and you have turned this nation into a place where you persecute others for their religious beliefs or the lack thereof. I'm confused. So yeah. Here we are once again. However, for the federal part of it, as far as the White House is concerned, it is a federal building, so they are subject to all federal training. And there was federal training going around that was doing some classes on race and white privilege. Because again, we can only say but so much. As people of color, we can only say but so much. It has to be a point where white people have to say, hey, to other white people, we got to check our own privileges. We may not have participated in the slave trade. We may not have had slave or been slave owners. However, your ancestors have, and we have benefited from that. We can still benefit from that. You can go into a bank and get a loan. You can go to a job and probably get that job even if you're underqualified. Ain't that something? Before someone who is qualified, because that person happens to be a person of color or have locks in their hair. You know what I'm saying? Or an afro. It's just crazy how you don't see that. It's not that you don't see it, you choose not to see it. So therefore, what he's done is said, you know what? Racism or white supremacy 101. We're going to act like it never existed, like it don't exist. So then therefore, they're making it up. Yet it is happening clearly in front of our faces. You had a young man got shot 7 times in the back. Why? Because he walked away from the police? When we've seen the white guy run around naked who murdered 2 people, injured a 3rd, running around naked as the police was running from him. Not one shot him. They didn't even pull out the tase gun to tase him. They waited till he got tired and then tackled him. And he had no clothes. Yet that black man in Rochester, New York had a thing put over his head because he claimed he had the coronavirus and was spitting, and then they placed him on the ground and held him down and he wound up suffocating. So then explain to me how racism doesn't exist. I'll wait patiently for that, for the Sandra Blands, for the Ahmaud Arbery's, all these things are clear examples that racism is alive and well. And for you to sit there and tell me it doesn't exist, that's bullshit. It is what it is. And I'm sorry, YouTube. You could say it's age restricted or whatever you've been telling me nowadays lately for me speaking the truth or promoting stuff that is actually going on that is affecting our community. But again, so be it. Let's have it. Because either way, the conversation needs to be had. You either have the conversation or you deal with the consequences. Because eventually, if you don't have the conversation, the consequences will come. So I'll wait patiently. Because you may get some, but you can't get us all. That whole Willie Lynch treatment, yeah, great, that was good, and it worked for what you needed it to work for, but it's not what's gonna work now. So you might want to start having that conversation before that conversation was no longer necessary, because by any means it will stop. And be sure to join Jay Wilson, Rebel Sun, The Official King Payne, Conscious TV, and Captivating Christian this and every Thursday at 6:45 Central Standard Time, 7:45 Eastern Standard Time for the Gentleman's Panel, where we are not afraid to go there and discuss an array of topics. See you there. In the face of a pandemic that has hit Black Americans harder than any other group, while the nation continues to confront toxic legacy of slavery and Jim Crow, 2 Georgia women have come together to build a community that will be a place free of oppression, a tight-knit community for our people to just come and breathe. They are calling it Freedom, Georgia. And they draw their inspiration from Wakanda, the fictional comic book country that was the setting for the movie Black Panther. Ashley Scott, a realtor from Stonecrest, Georgia, who was driven to seek therapy by her reaction to the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery, a young man who was jogging in a white neighborhood. After several sessions, she realized that her problem was 400 years of racial oppression and the trauma dating back to the establishment of slavery in North America. With her friend Renee Waters, an entrepreneur and investor, she found Freedom Georgia, a group of 19 families who've collectively purchased 96.71 acres of rural land in Tomsboro, a town of a few hundred people in central Georgia. with the intentions to develop a self-contained Black community. The space will have small homes for vacation use and will host weddings, retreats, and recreational functions, and may eventually evolve into an incorporated, self-sufficient community. Alright, you guys, here's an interesting story. So we had two people, well, one person actually had got tired of seeing the police brutality, the George Floyd, the Ahmaud Arbery, and really started to go to therapy and really try to get clarity on what is going on, why is this happening, and so on and so forth. So she decided to get together with a friend of hers, and they have created a utopia of their own called Freedom, Georgia. It's in the city of, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but I think it's Tomsboro, Georgia. Small community of about a couple hundred people. They have bought 96.70 something acres of land. They plan to make vacation homes and have scheduled events there, and then eventually at some point have a thriving actual community for a safe haven for Black people. I think it's a great idea. Side part of me though, the one side, and this may be a little bit like, but it's there, and I know some people thinking it too. It's a cool idea, but I don't like be like in the one spot where if we all just went there like, okay, we're all just gonna make this home. That's just the one spot they would just come and attack if they was trying to get rid of us all. So that part of me is a little side-eye, but it's an awesome idea. I wish them all the best. I plan to visit, vacation, or do any kind of support because we need to have a space. We just do. Every other nation has their space where they can go and feel protected. And the sad part is Africa has been so torn from us due to slave trade, apartheid, and everything else that there is still a disconnect there when, for the most part, they should be going the hardest for all of their people around the world because we're everywhere. And the fact that, a lot of times we don't even get the support, that we're here kind of struggling on our own is crazy. But yeah, I think it's an awesome idea. And I really wish for them to really get that up and going and off the ground. So if in fact you are in Georgia, you should check it out and let me know what it's like. And then when I plan to go and visit, I will check it out myself to see what it's like. But it's definitely a start in the right direction. And once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.